years since the formation of the Orange Democratic Movement, that is ODM party. Members traveled to Mombasa for the special celebrations, reflecting on key achievements such as the new constitution and devolution. Mombasa Governor Abdulsamad Sharif Nasir welcomed guests to the event as ODM leaders paid tribute to the late Raila Odinga for his immense contribution to the party's journey. They pledged to carry forward the vision and legacy of the Orange Movement, whereby the ODM Party Central Committee has officially endorsed Siaya Senator, that is Oburu Odinga, as party leader.
Sherehe maalum za kuadhimisha miaka 20 tangu kwa
Alright, we shall be bringing you, of course, we shall be keeping tabs with that particular commemoration of the 20th anniversary of the ODM party, which actually started yesterday. And of course, it is expected to, to go for the better part of this particular week. Of course, we shall be keeping tabs with that particular story and shall be bringing you subsequent, outcomes from that particular commemoration. Moving on to matters education, and Education Cabinet Secretary Julius Migos Ogamba has defended the transition from the Minet Health Insurance Scheme to the Social Health Authority, that is a SHA program, describing it as a timely and positive move aimed at improving access to healthcare services for teachers across the country. However, Ogamba expressed concerns over the maternity services package under the new scheme, urging a review to ensure that the specific needs of teachers are adequately addressed. His remarks comes amid ongoing protest by teachers who have claimed they were not properly consulted during the transition process.
Transition to SHA is a good one. And I saw the team from SHA here. I did notice, though, that the package for maternity, and I was asking my PS there where it is different, where it is different for different cadres. I thought it should be the same, but it is something that perhaps they'll need to look.
All right, still on matters education, junior secondary school teachers, that is the GSS teachers in Kilifi County, have asked the Teacher Service Commission to provide them with permanent employment, warning that they may refuse to report for duty next year if the demands are not met. The teachers criticized DSC for asking them to sign new temporary contracts instead of offering formal employment, a move they say demoralizes them and affects their productivity. They also highlighted that the implementation of the new curriculum, particularly CBE for grade 10, could face significant challenges due to the shortage of GSS teachers, emphasizing the urgent need for TSC intervention to ensure education in the county is not disrupted.
By these teachers with the Teacher Service Commission is a one-year contract. And we want to call upon the Teacher Service Commission to take this matter seriously and confirm these teachers so that they can get employment on permanent and pensionable terms.
Tunataka tupewe kazi pale kwa affordable housing, tufanye mjengo kwa sababu hii pesa tunapewa haitoshi.
These teachers have a lot of work that they are doing, but the amount of money they are given, they are being paid 17,000. This amount of money is not even enough to pay for their houses.
Katika hiyo 17,000 huyu mwalimu atakatwa housing project, atakata sijui ni vitu gani za SHA, atakata sijui ni NSSF, mwisho wa siku anabaki na change peke yake ndio inaingia kwa account. The same teacher hayuko kwa any medical scheme. The same teacher hapewi lunch shuleni, hapewi chakula, anafunza akiwa njaa, anateseka kufika kwa ile shule, hakuna commuter allowance. Kwa hivyo huyu mwalimu yuko under stress.
All right, moving on, 4 bloggers from Embu County have been summoned by the County Security Committee for questioning over alleged online threats against former Deputy President Rigathi Gachagua ahead of his planned visit to Mbeere North. The move follows a letter by Gachagua to the Inspector General of Police, that is Douglas Kanja, expressing concern over the alleged online threats related to his upcoming tour, which is part of the ongoing political campaigns. Embu County Commissioner Jack Abua confirmed that the suspects had been questioned and cautioned, adding that those found culpable will face prosecution. He assured residents that security has been strengthened during the ongoing campaign period.
Kuonyesha kwamba bado wanaendelea na hizo matamshi, then tutachukua hatua vile inatakikana, kwa sababu hatutaki uchochezi kwa wananchi wetu. Tumekuwa na amani na tunaendelea kuwa na amani, na tutahakikisha kwamba ile kipindi imebaki wiki 2 hatuna uchochezi katika uchaguzi ama ile kipindi cha uchaguzi Mbeere North.
All right, moving on, the head of public service, Felix Kosgei, has called for enhanced efficiency in the management of public resources across all government institutions and for prioritization of service delivery to citizens. Speaking during a consultative meeting marking the launch of the 2025-2026 campaign aimed at revitalizing the performance of state corporations and government agencies, Kosgei said that lessons learned from the 2-year pilot programs will serve as a key foundation for implementing future initiatives.
You are the human and institutional face of government. The performance of each entity represented here is, in truth, the performance of government itself. Across the breadth of our public institutions, the evidence gathered from the self-assessment tool administered by my office revealed both commendable progress and persistent weaknesses. The exercise was not intended to indict, but to illuminate and provide a factual mirror through which we may confront the...
All right, Joshua Ole Kaputa, the Jubilee Party candidate for the Narok Town Ward by-election, has dismissed claims that he had withdrawn from the race following the advice from his family elders. Now expressing confidence in his party under the leadership of former President Uhuru Kenyatta, Kaputa reaffirmed his commitment to remain in the contest and emphasized the importance of giving young people an opportunity to demonstrate leadership. The by-election scheduled for November 27 is expected to be highly competitive following the death of Lucas Olekudate of the ODM party, and our reporter Edwin Simiu details the story.
Narok Peace Ambassador and Jubilee Party's Narok Town Ward by-election aspirant Dr. Joshua Ole Kaputa has denied allegations over stepping down.
Watu wanasema mimi nimenunuliwa. Wazee ndio walikuja kwangu.
Intense closed door meeting, Ole Kaputa, who is rated high in poll race, says it is true he was allegedly summoned by respected elders of his family and advised to step down, saying it remains misleading and contrary to him.
Na wazee kukuja kwangu rika baba yangu ambaye alipumzika, mimi singekataa kuwasikia, lazima ningewasikia. Wakisema tunataka hii na hii, kusikia kwangu hawa wazee sikupewa nafasi ya kuongea. Mimi niliwasikiza lakini wao hawakunisikiza.
Kaputa has vowed to never be sell out of the party under former President Uhuru Kenyatta, stressing that young people must be given equal opportunity to show leadership.
Siwezi uza chama ya Uhuru Kenyatta. Siwezi fanya nini? Uza chama ya Uhuru Kenyatta. Hiyo ni chama ya heshima. Hiyo ni chama ambaye iko na nafasi ya kila mtu. Ni kweli mimi sina pesa. Na ndio watu wameona ati sasa kwa sababu mimi sina pesa, lakini niko na watu wanaweza kuja kuniuzia uoga. No.
The election slated for November 27th this year has been predicted to be a tight race following the death of Lucas Olekudate of ODM.
Remains the same, and I will not be a sellout in this county, and I will not be a sellout in this country. I'm a young man, I am growing, and I am taking time.
Edwin Simiu, EBN TV.
Right, Catholic bishops have warned that the new law regulating online platforms could be used to silence government critics and undermine the fundamental rights of Kenyans. Speaking during a press briefing, the bishops said there is a need to review the law and remove repressive provisions that threaten freedom of expression. They argued that the legislation was passed hastily and without adequate scrutiny. However, the bishops also urged Kenyans to exercise responsibility and discipline in their online interactions.
We raise serious concerns about the way the law on the Computer Misuse and Cyber Crimes Amendment Act and the Land Amendment Act number 21 of 2025 were crafted and enacted in a hurry. Kenyans have raised substantial concerns about the amendments which were signed into law. We strongly recommend a necessary review lest they be abused to curtail the very freedom they ought to protect. Meaningful public participation would be necessary. The fears Kenyans have expressed regarding these new laws should not be brushed off. They deserve to be listened to and, where necessary, corrective measures taken. Specifically, it seems that the Computer Misuse and Cybercrimes Amendment Act can be abused to silence government critics, to abuse the rights to privacy, or even to manipulate the electoral process.
Security officers in Busia County, in collaboration with the judiciary and the Office of the Director of Public Prosecutions, that is the ODPP, have destroyed narcotic drugs including bang and heroin valued at 21 million Kenya shillings. And according to the Busia County Criminal Investigations Officer, Wesley Kiprotich Langat, the drugs were seized in 2023 at the Busia border and at the Matayos inspection checkpoint. Busia Chief Magistrate Edina Nyaloti confirmed that 4 kilograms of heroin being trafficked from Uganda to Mombasa were intercepted at the border, and the suspect involved was sentenced to 50 years in prison.
Askari wale walikuwa roadblock, wali intercept lori ikiwa truck ikiwa inabeba hiyo bangi ambayo ilikuwa inaelekea Mombasa. Heroin yenyewe ilikuwa imenaswa wakati wa mwaka wa 2023. Kesi ilikuwa concluded.
Tulifanya kesi kotini. Kesi ya heroin tulifanya ilikuwa kesi ya 2023. Hiyo heroin ilikuwa inatoka Uganda inaingizwa Kenya. Maafisa wetu wakashika. Yule alikuwa nazo pia akashikwa akaletwa kotini, na wakati kesi iliisha alifungwa miaka 50.
To the public tunasema ya kwamba sisi kama upande wa mashtaka tukipata kesi kama hiyo haina diversion, haina plea bargain. Hiyo ni kesi ambayo tunafanya hadi mwisho, na wakati tunawasilisha kesi yetu kotini pia upande wa judiciary tuko na
Alright, it is exactly 29 minutes past the top of the hour. We are due for a short breather here on The Drift, but we'll be back in just a bit. Don't go too far.
You are watching EBN TV, transforming your world. You are watching EBN TV, transforming your
Alright, welcome back to the program. My name is Martin Mashera. This is The Drift. Now I'm here with the dailies today. We want to tell you what exactly the newspapers are saying this particular morning as far as the governance of this country is concerned. Now let's kickstart with the Daily Nation dated today, the 14th day of November 2025, and top stories on the Daily Nation front page. The apertures there, of course, of the clergy, the Catholic bishops, of course, and it says, bishops says, fix schools, crisis, and hospital woes. And Catholic bishops yesterday gave President William Ruto's government a pat on the back for what it is doing right, including the stable shilling and new roads, but also took stock in issues that are still problematic, such as the rampant corruption and what is termed quote-unquote hurried cybercrime laws. And of course, there is a scorecard right there, the good and the bad, highlighted there on the Daily Nation. Of course, number one is the ongoing recruitment of 24,000 teachers by TSC, that is the Teacher Service Commission. That's on the good side. And of course, number two, stable Kenya shillings, that also on the good side. Number three, on the good side, investments in infrastructure, especially roads. All right, and number four, on the good side of it, construction of TVET colleges. Now let's take a look on the bad side of the scorecard, and of course the bad side seems to be many as compared to the good side. Now the bad side, number one, Computer Misuse and Cybercrime Act has sections that need repeal. Number two, CBE implementation seems to be inspired by political considerations. Number three, schools are running in crisis mode due to delayed funds, lack of timely and sufficient payments of hospitals treating patients under SHA. Number five, rampant corruption in public offices. Number six, slow responses to natural calamities like the recent landslides. Of course, that's a scorecard that is actually highlighted there on the Daily Nation. Of course, the good side is actually 4, and the bad side is 6, you know, and the list continues on and on. Of course, on the good side also, you can say that the government, you know, has, you know, boosted the sports sector, where we've seen the construction of the Talanta Stadium, which is actually ongoing here in Nairobi, and of course, among other things. Of course, also on the bad side of it, we've seen ghost schools, corruption, and, you know, killings that actually happened, you know, during the anti-government protest in the better part of this particular year, and of course, early 2024. All right. Now, the Kenya Conference of Catholic Bishops, they are on the front page. That is the Vice Chairman, Most Reverend Anthony Muheria, in the addresses a media briefing at the Donham Day Spirit, or the Spiritually Center in Karen, I beg your pardon, in Nairobi yesterday, where the bishops outlined the successes and failures of the Kenya Kwanza administration, looking on the KCCB chairman, Most Reverend Maurice Muhatia, and Most Reverend Philip Anyolo, right there on the front page of this particular newspaper of the Daily Nation. All right, now matters national news. Mama Ida Odinga takes first short break since Raila's death, and she has traveled to Nairobi from her rural home, where she hosted hundreds of delegations. That's on page 3 of the Daily Nation newspaper this morning. And of course, the EACC, Kenya needs 200,000 more police officers. That is according to the EACC. On page 10, now the EACC, that is the Ethics and Anti-Corruption Commission, says, you know, the police needs to be, or the Kenya needs 200,000 additional police. And of course, you remember that the court actually halted the recruitment exercise because of a petition that was filed in court this particular week. Now, on page 2 of the Daily Nation is matters to do with the commemoration of ODM at 20. Now, on page 2, where, or rather, why you will be jailed 10 years, pay 10 million Kenya shillings fine if legislators pass fertility law. Of course, there is a picture there of Millie Odhiambo, that is the Suba member of parliament. Of course, the story continues to say that you could face up to 10 years in prison or a fine of up to 10 million Kenya shillings for engaging in unethical practices related to assisted reproductive technology if a new bill being considered by Parliament becomes law. Now, the legislation awaiting the presidential assent seeks to deter immoral practices ranging from practices ranging to the marginalization of art services and safeguarding the rights of parents, surrogates, and children born from reproductive technology. All right, that's on page 2 of the Daily Nation. Of course, on page 3 of the Daily Nation also is ODM at 20, big conferences boost Mombasa economy. And of course, yesterday we actually seen, you know, members and supporters of the the ODM party, which actually, went to Mombasa to commemorate this day. Rather, it has been decades of this party being in place. All right. Now, moving on, hundreds of Orange Democratic Movement delegates from across the country troop in Mombasa for our party's 20th anniversary commemoration. Traders and investors in the hospitality sector are all smiles. Besides the ODM celebrations, businesses has boomed since the start of November as the port city hosts major national and regional conferences, including the Kenya Primary School Head Teachers Association, that is KEPSHA conference. All right, that's on page 3, and of course also on page 3, Mama Ida takes first short break since Raila's death. That's also on page 3, where I've seen that Mama Ida Odinga has actually come to Nairobi from the rural home where the late former Prime Minister was laid to rest. Now let's take a look at what's making headlines on the Standard newspaper. Also, top story on the Standard newspaper, there are pictures there of the clergy And of course, the Standard newspaper says truth to power. That's the top story on the Standard newspaper. Now the clergy are on the warpath from Nairobi to Meru and now Kisumu. Church leaders have unleashed the searing rebuke of President William Ruto's administration, accusing it of presiding over what is termed quote-unquote sick nation, crippled by corruption, punitive laws and collapsing systems, leading to charge Kisumu's Anglican Bishop Charles Onginjo tore into the regime's theatrics and hollow promises to Nyanza, warning the seat and greed of strangling the country's moral core. And he accused President William Ruto of hoodwinking, what he termed as hoodwinking the community with token appointments, and likened local leaders to what he termed as squires, sharing for positions instead of services. That's on page 2 and 3. And of course, Reverend Philip Anyolo of the Nairobi Catholic Diocese says, in the quote, despite frequent public outcry and our repeated calls in the past several years, we continue to witness that massive corruption in government goes on unabated. We cannot condemn corruption publicly while tolerating it publicly. Integrity must be lived, end of quote. And of course, KCCB Vice Chair, that is Archbishop Anthony Muheria, says, and I quote, we ask that the matter of huge uncleared NHIF dues be fast-tracked and paid by the government. Many faith-based hospitals are on the brink of closing due to unpaid claims. Debts owed to faith-based hospitals in huge billions of shillings by SHA and NHIF are crippling the health institutions, to say the least, end of quote. Those are the words of the KCCB Vice Chairperson, that is Archbishop Anthony Muheria. Of course, Reverend Nicholas Mutweri of NCCK says, and I quote, majority of the residents are unhappy and feel poorer than they were 1 year ago. They feel that the country is heading in the wrong direction and are deeply troubled about the rising cost of living and unemployment. And of course, that is Nicholas Mutweri of the NCCK. They had, remember, they had a press briefing yesterday, where they highlighted, the good and bad, the scorecard of this current regime, it remaining with actually less than 2 years. All right, now that's a story on page 2, where church decries what the Standard terms as sick nation, calls out president on bad governance. Also on page 3, Onginjo tells of Nyanza over Ruto praises. That's on page 3 on the Standard newspaper this particular morning. And of course on page 4, how outspoken clerics checked the executive and shaped politics. Of course, these are stories that continues on and on the front pages to the first few pages of the Standard newspaper. Right, it is exactly 47 minutes past the top of the hour. We're due for a short breather here on The Drift, but when we come back, we're going to have a conversation with a portrait artist, also a visual artist. He will be going to, tell us how the journey is. What does it take, to create canvases into masterpieces? All right, that's what's coming up in a few after the break. Don't go too far.